This training video assumes that you have already watched the first setup and installation video. In this second video, we will show you how you can use the 16 demo scenarios. We will also make you a little bit more familiar with the PalmLock Control Center settings as well as the log file. To get started, we will pretend that April stole Thomas's logon credentials, which would generally give her access to all of Thomas's classic information. So after typing in Thomas and the password, which is password, April sees this little window popping up, and she is enrolled in the system. She puts her hand on the device, and you see the Windows message that will not allow April access, even she has Thomas logon credentials. So password sharing was successfully prevented. In a real log file, we would actually see that April tried to log in, but was rejected. Now I will let Thomas log in. We present the right Palm vein, and with a nice beep, we immediately get access to the SAP system. The first thing we will look at is the PalmLock Control Center. In here is where we enroll the templates and where we can look at log files. We set the control settings, and to show you first, we have the identification test. Now if April puts her hand on the device, you can see that April was uniquely identified. If I click that identification test again, I put Thomas's hand on the device, we see Thomas was identified. This is very powerful. If you have 5 customers and you enrolled all of them, you can enroll them right here from the screen and then run the identification test to show them that the system can truly identify every user, no matter when and where they are and how they are logged in. The best way to show that is the log file. In the PalmLock log file, you can see everything that happened with PalmLock protected functions. And while all the information is available in the SAP log file, we have nicely color-coded and organized this. But the most important part to show in this log file, as we have shown earlier, the person gets uniquely identified. Until now, auditors could only see which SAP user ID was used to execute the function. Now, for the first time, we can actually show how Thomas Smith, uniquely identified with Smith's biometric hand vein template, was not authorized to post a financial document. This gives the customers ultimate controls, and to make it even more attractive, we have added features like IP addresses, terminal IDs, to give more powers to the auditors and the managers to really know what is going on in their SAP systems. Now let's take a look at the PalmLock Control Center settings. These settings are extremely extensive, and we just want to show you one little thing here, mainly to explain the concept. SAP users can set unlimited re-authentication checkpoints. We also refer to them as biometric checkpoints anywhere in the SAP system. So as per example, if they wanted to protect a button that opens credit card information, we would basically place a simple piece of ABAP code, which is SAP's internal programming language, into that button, give that button a unique ID number like the 160, and now the PalmLock or PalmLock Control Center would ask us how we want to re-authenticate that particular re-authentication checkpoint. In this case, of course, we take the Palm Secure as a re-authentication method. We could also combine it with a smart card or other measures. And then it's very important that we set the global checkmark in order to basically lock out everybody else. If we wanted to be very specific, we could even go down to a level where we specifically invite a selected group of templates. Like for example here, we have invited only the principals of a high school to approve overtime. And that became a case at the school in Florida where assistants had the official logon credentials for the principals and took the liberty to approve themselves some overtime. Now they can still log in, do all the work of the executives, but only the biometric templates of the executives can approve overtime. Now let's get out of this screen and go back in the real demo. We get started with the SE16 data browser. In this data browser, you can access every single table in SAP and look up critical information like, for example, suppliers. One click and you see the suppliers are being displayed, but if I go back and select another table which is specifically protected, I'm executing this table and you now see that my Palm is required to execute the table. So basically, this is what the customer will ask. Yes, we can protect some tables and others are widely available to all authorized SAP users. The same applies to critical transactions like the SE38, which is the ABAP editor, very critical for programming functions. We will lock the entire function down and only allow selected administrative users or programmers to enter into the screen, but we're preventing unauthorized users to do modifications to the powerful SAP system. SU01 is another critical screen because in here we manage the entire setup of new users. I could simply go in here and copy an administrative user to another user that the other people might not be aware about, and once I leave the company I still have another administrator user that I can log into and cause any kind of damages. Let's move on to HR. PA20 is a transaction where we can display HR information. And at this point, allow me to point out to you that the SAP has solutions for 25 different vertical markets, but generally every SAP user runs HR and they all run finance, so that's what they have in common, and there are a lot of things that they need to protect. PA20 is to display HR master data. So we can go in here and simply select addresses, and once we execute, you see the addresses are being displayed because the customer decided that an address is not that critical. But if we go back and we will look at basic pay, which is the info type 008, everybody might agree that it is critical information and it actually takes a palm vein scan to verify how much money the CEO of the company makes. The same, if we go back, applies to the bank details. Not everybody should have access to the critical bank details, so biometric authentication is required to look at the critical bank information. Okay, let's step things up and go into the PA30, which is maintaining HR information. And what I want to show you here is that once we access personal data, we of course require the palm vein identification. And what I want to show you here, please pay attention to the social security number and the date of birth, which are critical identifiers, especially in the United States. And if another person that is not specifically invited with the biometric credentials from the control center, such as April, puts her hand on the device, she will still get access to the screen, but you see how we have blocked the critical social security number and the birthday for specifically uninvited visitors. The last transaction, PA40, is a simple transaction protection. This is the transaction where you would go in and set up new employees, and of course it's not a good idea to leave that open, because I could set up my cousin as an employee and then he would get paid every day and he doesn't even live in the vicinity. So, moving on to time and attendance. This is a complete different concept here, but the Palm Secure is a great device for this application. You're probably familiar with biometric time and attendance, and what we can show here that directly in SAP in CAT 2 we could have this screen on a tablet or on a PC at the entrance door. Any user that comes clicks on the button, holds their hand over the device. It's non-intrusive, it's very hygienic, and it identifies Thomas number 6 is here and ready to work at 3:12 p.m. So I hit enter and the screen goes back for the next person to do the same thing. So now if I click the button again and April puts her hand on the device, she is logged in also at 3:12:58. This is a very simple application for time and attendance using the Palm Secure directly inside the SAP system. Going back out, we are going into the ESS change work schedule. This is an application that we use with kiosks, where we also see a big opportunity for the non-intrusive Palm Secure device, where we would go into a function and simply to change our work schedule. And again, we're doing this with kiosks, specifically in South Africa, where people go in and you can imagine what happens if your coworker just steals your password to log in to give you the Christmas shift so he can be at home with the family. All this can be prevented with biometrics. Let's move on to finance. FB01 is to post a document in outgoing payment, and I have filled out the screen here for you. All we can do in here once we hit enter and move on to the next screen is we can make a selection between 8,000 and 16,000 euro, and I'll do 8,000 first and press enter to show it was immediately posted to the system. If I go back and I now choose 16 and click enter, I can see the Palm verification, and now after Thomas has verified his identity, we actually posted the 16,000 euros. So what's happening here? We have actually set a threshold of 10,000 euro, and that is a very common challenge at every company. Once a person has access to transfer funds, there is no limitation of how much they can transfer. We can actually put the checkpoint in a certain amount, so we can say everybody in the group can make wire transfers under 10,000 euro, but when it comes to a larger amount like 15 or 20,000, then biometric verification is required. We could even take it to the next level where over 100,000 Thomas would have to verify with the Palm vein, but then get the supervisor to reconfirm. So we have two signatures, two biometric signatures on that outgoing transfer. And that is unheard of in the financial world so far. Moving on to the FB60, enter incoming invoices. Later on we will see how easy it is to create a fake vendor, and now we're going in and paying the fake vendor. So it's very critical that authorized users are identified for clear accountability when a vendor is being paid. And in this case, we would be paying $100,000 to a vendor that we have created ourselves, and we are actually the vendor, and the money is ending up in our pocket. We actually had a customer in Mexico that lost $60 million with exactly that scenario. Another sensitive transaction is the ME54N to release a purchase order requisition. This transaction is generally protected, so only authorized users have access to this transaction, and we can clearly tell in the log file who ordered those Fujitsu Lifebooks and the Stylistics, and we have clear accountability about the purchase orders that are being sent out. After that, we are moving on to a workbench, material management. A lot of production data is stored inside the SAP system, and in this case, where we're talking about a secret recipe from a soft drink manufacturer, we simply don't want everybody that has access to this transaction to see what this secret recipe is about. This could also apply to critical research data or any other data inside the SAP system. All of us have seen in the news customer data being compromised. There's actually a Data Protection Act that requires from companies to inform customers if they think that their data might have been compromised. And we want to show you how easy it is to simply pull up a list in a table like we have done earlier, and then you would click on System List Save Local File, which I have done here for you. Once I click on Local File, the Windows message pops up, and I can either define a Dropbox or put it right onto my smart drive and click on Generate the List. And we want to show here how generating or saving this list is actually protected with the Palm vein scan. So before anybody could write those critical customer data to a smart drive or a Dropbox, they would have to authenticate with a Palm vein. And so if we have defined in the control center that only 2 people in the entire corporation are able to save those data, for the first time we can make sure that our data is actually very secure. The next thing we've seen in the news is credit card data being compromised, and this could either happen the way we just showed it, that simply lists will be downloaded with all the credit card information, or in a customer service representative environment, they could simply click on the payment card button and take the credit cards right out of here. And as you can see, we have actually put the verification checkpoint into that button, so a Palm vein scan is required to look at the credit card information for clear accountability. The next thing I want to show is creating fake vendors by unauthorized users. And just to reiterate what we have shown at the beginning here, I will click on the transaction to create a vendor, and I will put April's hand onto the device. So you see what happens. Actually, the user was not recognized, which is not true. We see in the log file it was April, but we really don't want to let her know. And at this point, an email notification would go to the supervisor, so everybody is informed that there was a fraud attempt. It didn't happen, but it was not only prevented, it was also reported immediately. So again, it takes the right hand of Thomas to create the vendor. Just to reiterate, what the bad guys do here is they create fake vendors and then simply send themselves an invoice, pay it from the company, and it goes right to their bank account because accidentally they are the vendor that they created. So moving on, the XK01 to create a vendor is very popular among bad guys, and therefore it requires a Palm vein scan to enter the transaction. The reason is not only to keep the bad guys out, but also to have clear accountability of who created which vendor. So if later there are fake invoices being written and money being paid to fake bank accounts, it's very easy to trace back who actually created the vendor who started it all. The last thing I want to show you is the transaction VA01 creating a sales order. This transaction is used by a retail customer in Europe to protect 255 cash registers. They have over 800 cashiers that rotate, and every time a cashier is creating a sales order at any of the cash registers, they have to provide a biometric template which gets matched to the sales receipt, so they have clear accountability in the system which cashier has created which sales order. Last but not least, I want to point out that in our manuals we have a functional overview, which is a one-page document outlining all the 16 scenarios. So this is great to print out and take to a meeting or a trade show, so you can look at it once in a while and get yourself a little bit more familiar with the scenarios. Before we finish this up, allow me to show you really quick how we can delete the templates. We didn't want you to delete templates accidentally, so you actually have to go to the BioLog folder, which you can do by simply open the file location here. And in the folder you will find a data file, and in this data file here are the 2 templates that I created today for April and Thomas, so you can simply select them and delete. If it's your own template, I would suggest keeping it, but if you have enrolled 100 customers here for the day, this is where you would delete them to clear out the system. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the near future.